Okay, so good afternoon, selamat petang semua pelajar. The topic for today's lecture is on class structure and in modern societies. Okay, all right.
Prof,
Mhm.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but we cannot see your screen.
You can
Blank.
see. Wow, that's strange. Tadi nampak, sekarang tak nampak. Okay, apa? Buat semula ya. Okay, let me redo that. Stop sharing dulu. Then kita share balik. Maybe I need to okay, automatically optimize. Ini nampak?
Nampak.
Okay, all right.
Okay, thank you, Prof.
Welcome. Thank you for telling me. All right, so class structure in modern societies. Nampak kan? Saya takut dia
Nampak, Prof.
klik pula tak nampak.
Nampak.
Okay, so what do we mean by class? Class tu refers to some kind of stratification, ya, satu pembahagian society into different groups ataupun classes, right? So one of the persons who started the idea of class ataupun class in society adalah seorang yang bernama Karl Marx. You probably have heard of him. Ataupun kali pertama, tak kisahlah. Karl Marx, the father of communism, by the way, but he is also famous for his work as a sociologist. Anyway, yeah. So it has been argued that in the early period of development of industrial capitalism, that's the time when Karl Marx came out with his ideas. Yeah. So there were major class differences. He observed that, but that class has become unimportant in modern societies, especially in the West today. Jadi the idea of classes that was first set ataupun mentioned by Karl Marx does not exist in modern day era. Yeah. Right. So he was talking about the two groups of people, the bourgeoisie and also the proletariat. Proletariat itu adalah orang yang bekerja, whilst the bourgeoisie adalah orang yang more or less like the entrepreneur ataupun the industrialist, yeah, and also orang yang ada wang lah, ada duit, yeah, who employ other people to do work for them, right? So so even then, yeah, even if such scenario doesn't exist anymore, yeah, the influence of class may be less than Marx supposed, yeah, during his time. He didn't live long enough to see his prediction, what he hoped to see, that there is a classless society one day. He did not see that, yeah. In fact, his idea of classless society, tidak ada kelas itu, actually did not happen, right? But it occurred in different ways, yeah, different form, in other words, right? So the influence of class may be less than what was assumed to be by Karl Marx, but class differences are still very, very important nowadays. Nah, even sekarang ini masih lagi differences between group of people, either it is based on economy ataupun based on social aspect. Yeah. So even physical differences are also correlated with class membership. That certain class of people or certain group of people have certain physical characteristic, for example, right? So the working class people who have on average lower birth weight. Ini sebab apa? Sebabnya adalah um, it is associated with the socio-economic situation ataupun condition faced by the working class people. They're not so rich. They don't have that much money as the higher class people, right? So the tendency, for example, they have a lower birth weight and higher rates of infant mortality di kalangan mereka itu, ya, and smaller at maturity, less healthy, tends to die at younger age than those in the higher classes. Those were things that people can still observe among the working class, right? So the major types of mental disorder, for example, and physical illness, termasuk heart disease, cancer, diabetes, pneumonia, bronchitis, are all more common at lower levels of the class structure than towards the top. Jadi um, um, nampaknya ada perbezaan ya di antara di lower class and the upper class. Ya. Even dari segi um, apa nama tu dari segi penyakit, ya, the tendency for the lower class to suffer from diseases, ya, which may not be common among the top class or top group. Okay, so let's just quickly go to um, the theories of class. There are at least 4 or 5 theories of classes, but I'm just going to look at the theory by Karl Marx. Yeah, the others by Max Weber. Right. Karl Marx ni merupakan seorang Jerman, ya, German. Sorry, he was born in Germany, educated in Germany, but later he moved to London in his adult life, yeah, professional life. So Karl Marx, according to him, a class is a group of people defined by whether they own or do not own the means of production. Jadi klasifikasi mengikut Max Weber adalah berdasarkan kepada sama ada seseorang tu mempunyai means of production. Means of production di sini adalah contohnya kalau dalam bidang pertanian, whether the person owns land for farming or not. Kalau dalam bidang perindustrian, so means of production di situ adalah the industry itself, the production lines and so on. Yeah. So that's according to him whether or not a person own the means of production. So means of production here means the way that a person make a livelihood or earning a living, for example. Jadi dalam in the agriculture society, iaitu society which is considered as traditional, right? The means of production, land, plow, pastoral animals, ataupun animals that are used in the farm. So for the pre-industrial society, there are which are agriculture in nature. They have 2 main classes ketika itu, ya, masa dahulu in the traditional agriculture society ada 2 kelas ataupun 2 main classes. The first one is the aristocrats and also the gentry. Yeah, these are people who own land and animals, and this is very much describing those who were in England during that time, yeah, in the West. And the other one is the peasants ataupun petani, yeah, and the slaves, yeah, who works in the farm. So the 2 main classes of people during the agricultural society. However, in the modern industrial societies, the means of production is different from the agriculture society. Yeah. So the means of production are factories, machinery, pejabat, wealth, and capital which are needed to buy them. Yeah. So based on this modern industrial societies, there are two main classes of people. The first one is those who own the means of production, which include the capitalist, industrialist yang disebutkan oleh Weber sebagai the bourgeoisie, he call it bourgeoisie. Yeah. And the second group is the people who earn their living by selling labor. In other words, they work for the industrialists, work for the capitalist tadi. Yeah. So these are the working class ataupun the proletariat, ya, bahasa yang digunakan ataupun terms that he used. Ya. So during in the industrial um, uh, society, capitalist society, there are two groups: the bourgeoisie and the proletariat, according to um, Max Weber. Okay. So Max Weber believed that the maturing of industrial capitalism would bring about an increasing gap between the wealth of the minority and the poverty of the majority of the mass of production. Jadi dia merasakan bahawa it's the capitalism, ya, yang menyebabkan um, jurang perbezaan di antara yang kaya. Yang kaya ini dari segi bilangan mereka adalah sedikit, and those who are in poverty ataupun kumpulan yang lebih ramai tapi mempunyai pendapatan yang rendah, ya. Or he called them the proletariat tadi, ya, proletariat. Okay, so Marx saw the persistence of poverty in industrialized countries where the income of most of the people, the majority tadi, would remain extremely low, while a minority would become more and more wealthy. Yaitu pandangan beliau, ya, semasa beliau membuat permatian during the industrial revolution, ya, di England ketika itu, ya, when there were a lot of industries, but the industries are owned by few people, few wealthy people, and employed so many working class people who are relatively poorer, ya, yang kurang berpendapatan, dan juga selain daripada itu keadaan tempat mereka tinggal, kehidupan mereka adalah lebih rendah, ya. So, however, that was what he assumed, ya, to had happened. Tetapi sebenarnya perkara itu tidak, ya, has not happened in matured industrialized countries in the West. Jadi yang mengatakan bahawa yang majority itu semakin miskin, and those who are in power, those who have the money becomes more richer and so on. Yeah. So it did not happen actually in not in any country actually. In Europe, neither it is in Britain. Right? Sebabnya adalah because workers have been paid better, yeah, so they can buy things which they always wanted to have. For example, so they can buy the things that they produce as well, yeah, from the industry, for example. Right, so gaji naik. Jadi tidaklah macam dulu anggapan Karl Marx mengatakan bahawa ya, para pekerja itu gajinya takkan naik. So the rich will always exploit, eksploitasi ke atas mereka yang bekerja, yang golongan rendah tadi. Okay, so the important thing about concept, ya, yang disebutkan oleh Marx tadi, concept of class tadi, is that his theory of class is very objective and not based on what people believe about why they are rich or why they are poor. Right? Jadi hanya melihat kepada ekonomi saja, ya, economic system which created inequalities during those time, ya, berdasarkan kepada apa yang beliau lihat dan apa yang beliau tulis dalam when he came up with the theory. Ya. Jadi itu apa yang berlaku di dahulu, and whether or not that kind of kelas seperti itu masih lagi kekal ataupun tidak. Tapi apa yang nampak sekarang ini adalah um, the poorer doesn't get poorer because as the industry or as the factory earns more money, the workers also earn higher pay as well, right? So they can improve their quality of life as well. Yeah, bukan seperti yang dijangkakan oleh Karl Marx dahulu. All right. So the second person who came in just like the after Karl Marx, but Karl Marx at that time was still alive. But this is the guy, also another German, yeah, German sociologist by the name of Max Weber, and who, if you look at the kejap tadi, if you look at the nama tu dari segi masa mereka, Karl Marx lived from 1818 to 1883, sedangkan Max Weber was born in 1864, so he met and also read what Karl Marx has written. Yeah. So he more or less agree, but then modify Karl Marx punya theory. Right? So Weber's approach to stratification ataupun bahagian society ini is based on the analysis by Karl Marx, but he modifies and elaborates on it. Yeah. So according to there are differences between the two, between Karl Marx theory and that of Max Weber. Ada perbezaan ya di antara keduanya. So Weber is pretty much accept the idea of Karl Marx, yeah, that class is founded on objectively given economic conditions. But at the same time, he recognized that class divisions is not based solely on ownership or lack of control over the productive resources. Karl Marx punya idea, if you don't have any control, if you don't own the means of production, you belong to the poor group ataupun lower class. Tetapi mengikut Marx, there are other factors which should be taken into account, ya, untuk membuat klasifikasi societies into different classes. So the class system, according to Max Weber, so more or less he modified the system earlier lah, is not based entirely on the ownership of property. Okay, not entirely on the ownership of property ataupun means of production tadi. There are other resources which are equally important. Sumber-sumber tersebut ataupun resources tersebut include the skills and credential qualifications. If you have a certain level of education and so on, yeah, which can affect the types of job that the person may have one day, and also how much they will earn from that job ataupun occupation. Right? Jadi bukan semata-mata sama ada mereka itu mempunyai means of production ataupun tidak. Contohnya, those in managerial and professional positions, seperti doctor, lawyers, and so on, yeah, engineers, they earn more, yeah, and work in better environments than those people who are in the blue collar jobs. Yeah, so at the other end, you have the skilled blue collar workers who earn more than the unskilled labor. Jadi bukan dua kumpulan semata-mata, tetapi di antara kumpulan-kumpulan tersebut tu extreme classes itu terdapat juga mereka that falls within that continuum tadi, ya. Right, so ada beberapa kelas maksudnya, ya. Not just two classes as described by Karl Marx earlier on. So Weber added two more other features to the stratification system on top of the class tadi, ya. Jadi selain daripada class system, Max Weber tambahkan lagi sistem stratifikasi, iaitu status and also party, ya, status dan party. Alright, so what does it mean? What is the meaning of status and party sini, ya? Jadi according to Weber, status, yeah, refers to the differences between social groups based on honor or prestige that others accord to them, ya. Status. Contohlah kalau kita di sini, if you are uh, 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 pengulu, for example, district officer, for example, in a district, you have a higher status compared to those other people in the district. Ya, itu honor ataupun prestige that others accord to them, right? So, for example, new money is looked down upon by the well-established wealthy, others having high status but are poor. Ya, jadi so a person can have high status, maybe, but not so rich. Yeah. For example, doctors and lawyers have high status in society, but they may not be earning as much as the industrialists lah. Yeah. But this is changing. Yeah. Object class is objectively given by status depends on people's subjective evaluation of social differences. Itu bergantung kepada penilaian yang dibuat oleh society actually. Yeah. So classes are derived from economic factors. Classes tadi, ya, are derived from economic factors associated with property and earnings, but status is governed by lifestyle. Jadi status itu lebih kepada lifestyle rather than economic status tadi. Economic class, ya, sorry. Alright, the other stratification ataupun group according to Max Weber adalah parti. Ini bukan parti politik. Parti is a term ataupun used to define a group of individuals who work together because they have common grounds, aims or interests. I think the political party juga merupakan satu, it comes from this word lah, yeah? Because they do have common objectives, aims and so on, yeah, and they have a common background as well, right? So that is known as party, including, I think, to some extent, political party. Jadi, so parties may appeal to concern cutting across class differences. In other words, those who belong to the party can come from various classes, yeah. Contohnya dari high class to lower class and so on. So quite the same as what we have. Yang masuk parti, sebagai contoh, parti UMNO, or parti MCA, or parti GPS, or whatever, yeah. The members, yeah, of that party is comprised of people who come from different classes. Okay, so parties may be based on religion ataupun based on nationalist ideas, right? So not necessarily talking about political parties, but parties as a general. So the parties to which people are belong to or affiliated, yeah, express religious as well as class differences. So you can see that as well. Jadi itu according to Weber. Jadi Weber menambahkan lagi the way people can be classified in society. Yeah, so people can be classified according to social status ataupun economic status dan juga non-economic status as well. Yeah. And also party, in other words, which may include people of different classes tadi. Okay, itu more or less just to tell you a bit about the theory regarding class ataupun the formation of class, yeah, or classes. All right, so most sociologists would argue that Weber's scheme ataupun the way he classify society is more flexible and also sophisticated, but both their ideas, Marx and his ideas, are still used extensively in the sociology today. However, with some modifications, yeah, some modifications. Jadi the apa nama tu classification of today's people into various classes mempunyai elemen yang telah nyatakan awal oleh Karl Marx dan juga Weber. So those working in the Marxian tradition, for example, have further developed his ideas while others have elaborated on Weber's idea. Jadi, in other words, later scholars and so on, they build upon some other Marxian ideas ataupun Karl Marx ideas ataupun berdasarkan kepada Weber's ideas. So I'm not going to discuss that today. Maybe later on, if there is a need, I will look into that. Yeah, the other theories berkaitan dengan skepticism. Yeah. Right. Jadi soalannya, adakah benar? Is it true that class structure has flattened or become more equal nowadays? Adakah class structure itu tidak banyak beza di antara kelas ataupun the amount of equality di kalangan masyarakat itu semakin saksama more or less, ya, ataupun more equal than it was before. So wealth ataupun kekayaan is one of the measures ataupun one of the ways people classify, yeah, society. Okay, so wealth ataupun kekayaan refers to all assets when individuals owns, ya, contohnya stocks and shares, which financial wealth, savings. Selain daripada itu, properties such as homes, land, and items sold. Yeah. So that is a form of apa namanya kekayaan dari segi ekonomi. Income on the other hand refers to wages ataupun gaji, yeah, and salaries coming from paid occupations. Wealth tadi comes from stock, from share, from investment, from sales of properties and so on. Yeah? But income refers to the salary or wages received from paid occupations, and also it also includes unearned money from investment, ya, yang dalam bentuk interest and juga dividends. So those are a form of a source of economic status, ya, dari segi income ataupun wealth tadi. So most people get their money from what they earn, while wealthy derive the bulk of the income from investment. Jadi orang yang kaya, mereka mendapatkan apa nama tu wang mereka daripada pelaburan. Contohnya, ya, most of what they earn is not from working for other company atau other people, but from the business that they have. Yeah, right. So, but most people earn their money from working, whether in effect in industry ataupun sebagainya. Alright, so wealth is concentrated in the hands of relatively few. Tidak ramai ya, yang mempunyai kekayaan ini ataupun wealth. Ya. So globally, about 20% of the rich enjoy the 80% of the world's wealth. Ya, kekayaan di dunia ini 80% daripada kekayaan dunia ini dipunyai oleh 20% daripada mereka yang kaya. For example, in Britain in 1996, the most wealthy 10% of the population in Britain at that time, about 50%, they own about 50% of the total wealth, right? Jadi 50% lagi itu dipunyai oleh the rest of the 90% lah maksudnya, right? Of the population tadi, who are relatively poorer. In the United States of America, for example, the wealthiest 10% of families own 90% of corporate stocks and business assets, as well as 95% of bonds. So a small portion of the population owns the majority of the wealth in America. Right? Okay, so in Malaysia and Singapore, it's quite similar. There's similar picture of inequality also has emerged. Yeah. So the gap between the rich and the poor, right, exists even in Malaysia, where 50% of Malaysians own no financial assets. Ini yang boleh dipanggil mereka yang of lower class lah, tidak ada financial assets. And the top 10% control 75% of the total financial assets in the country. Jadi the top 10% ini macam juga more or less like what is happening in Europe, in Britain, and also in the United States. Yeah. So 80% of the low income group or low income barely owns about 5.5% of the country's financial assets. Right? So itulah situasinya. Ya. So the rich few owns so much, while as the majority controls only a small portion of the country's wealth, actually. Yeah. All right. So in terms of income, one of the most significant changes, for example, in the Western countries over the past century adalah the rise in real income of the majority of the working population. Jadi, general working population has earned more than what the ancestors earned before. Yeah, so they have good real income. Yeah, real income is actual income excluding the effect of inflation, so as to provide a basis for comparison from year to year. Jadi taking into account the inflation tadi lah. So that is the situation, yeah, among Western countries. Yeah. But blue collar workers in the Western societies earn about 3 to 4 times more than their counterparts during Karl Marx time. Jadi apa yang dikatakan oleh Karl Marx tadi yang mengatakan that the poor will remain poor was proven to be wrong, ya. Apa yang dapat sekarang ini, even the blue collar workers tadi yang pekerja biasa earn 3 to 4 times than during Marx time. So they can, because of that, because of the increase in salary or increase in wages, they can purchase a range of goods and services and are vastly more affluent, yeah, than most people that had been before them in human history. Jadi Itu yang berlaku sebenarnya. So there has been an improvement, yeah, economically and also socially among those in the lower income group as well. And one of the most important reasons for the growth in earning is increasing in productivity, yaitu dari segi output per worker. And that is actually the basis for wages sebenarnya. If you are very productive, then you can expect to be paid higher. Gaji lebih lebih tinggi, lebih besar daripada orang lain contohnya. Right? So, but how do people increase productivity? Now, one of the ways, one of the means lah, yeah, whereby people increase their productivity is by the use of technology. Yeah, technology helps to increase production, yeah, per worker. Ya, kalau dibandingkan dengan di kebanyakan negara dunia ketiga, where the productivity ataupun output per worker dengan menggunakan apa namanya alat-alat tradisional, ya, subsistence farming, for example, where each worker produce very little, yeah, in terms of output per worker. So how do you fight for for kalau productivity itu rendah, you can't ask for higher salary because salary has to be matched with productivity. Jadi itu so there are a lot of arguments around this, yeah. But with technology, you can help to increase productivity, and therefore you can expect to have higher income as well, or higher salary as well. Right, so that is the reason behind the apa nama tu for the growth in earnings lah, disebabkan oleh productivity meningkat yang berkaitan dengan penggunaan teknologi dalam industri. So as in the case of wealth, income distribution remains unequal, right? So masih lagi kekal inequality in terms of income. And in the United Kingdom or UK, the top 20% of households recorded in 1994, and they receive 50% of the total income of the population. That is slight improvement, yeah, slight improvement, but still, excuse me, still differences between those in the high income and also the low income group as well. Juga sama di United States pun sama, ya, similar trend was also observed there. Okay. So, what are the changes in class structure? We have seen the classification that is made by Karl Marx and also Weber, but those were the traditional ways of classification ataupun stratification. Now you could see actually kind of modern ways ataupun cara-cara baru ataupun perubahan dalam class structure di dunia secara keseluruhannya, ya. So you could see, for example, the high class people with private jets, mansions, what else? Sport cars, and the middle class, for example, we have these people, teachers, engineers, and so on, who are comprised of the middle class, yeah. And this yacht ni, this belong, of course, to the top class lah, yeah, class yang tinggi. This one here probably belongs to the middle class group. And then you probably have this group. Ini di Amerika lah, even Amerika, they have this lower class group, but lower class group ini kalau dibandingkan dengan di kebanyakan dunia apa namanya, developing nations, they are still better than many what majority of our people in the third world countries. Right. So this group is probably the working class kind of people. Yeah. All right. So I'm just putting these pictures just to more or less indicate ataupun untuk menunjukkan keadaan di dunia ini, in societies there are various groups of people, classification of people as well, based on economy, based on the kind of houses they have, the kind of cars they drive, and so on. Yeah. All right. So let's look at the first one. Yeah, this is the changes. Apa nama, perubahan daripada sistem classification yang dibuat oleh Karl Marx dengan Weber tadi. Right. So the modern classification system or class structure in modern societies. One is the upper class. Now, the upper class are those who are very, very rich, super rich. Yeah. And these are people, according to both Marx and Weber, property. Yeah. Property, as both Marx and Weber emphasize, confers power, and members of the upper class have direct control of industrial and financial capital. And this leads to leading position in political, educational, and cultural sphere. Jadi kerana mereka ni kaya, so they can lead in other field as well, including politics, education, cultural aspect as well. Yeah. One good example is the former president of the United States, who was rich. I mean, rich by many standards lah, but it's not the richest man. Donald Trump, for example. Yeah, because of his status, his family, his father was rich before, and then he passed it on to him, and he make use of that power, to control and come up into take the position as a leader of the political party, for example. Okay. Not so much in the third world countries lah, but in developed countries that's the way. So people who are rich, who owns capital, financial capital, industry, and so on, they tend to have other to be leaders in other fields as well. The British sociologist by the name of John Scott, for example, 1991, he described three components of the upper class in Britain in the 19th century. Jadi, according to Scott, John Scott, there are three components of the upper class in Britain in the 19th century. The first one is the landowners, ataupun dikenali sebagai aristokrasi. And the second groups are those people who are the financial entrepreneurs. Yeah, financial entrepreneurs. These are people who have financial capital. And the other group, of the upper class are the industrialists. So these are people who tends to be rich, and have a lot of money, and in terms of social status as well. However, conflicts and divisions also persist among the different components of the upper class, as some policies benefit one group and not the other. Jadi di antara mereka yang kaya ni ataupun top class ni juga terdapat konflik ataupun di mana one group may not be happy with what they have because of certain policies by the government and so on, which may prefer one group over the other in terms of their policies and all that. So that is the upper group. And these are the upper groups, are the upper class tadi, are the super rich people. And then the middle class. This is the middle class group. Middle class ini boleh terbagi kepada tiga sectors, three distinct sectors within the middle class: the upper middle class, the middle class, and the lower middle class. Jadi middle class ini besar sebenarnya, ya. So it can be divided into three subclasses, ya, of middle class. Right, the upper middle class, middle class, and the lower middle class. So the upper middle class, for example, is made up mainly of those holding managerial and professional positions, ya, mempunyai those who hold top management position, and also those who are in the professional positions, yeah, medical doctors, engineers, accountants, and whatnot, plus managers and so on, yeah. So most of experience some form of higher education. Most have experienced some form of higher education in the UK. They mainly hold liberal views on social and political issues, the upper middle class. And they provide specialized knowledge and also managerial know-how. And in return, because of that skill, because of that knowledge, they enjoy certain privileges, ya. Privileges ini termasuk higher salaries, job security, and some kind of fringe benefits, ya, for those who have the upper middle class tadi, ya. Jadi if you look at general manager, for example, they have higher salaries, they have job security, they have benefits. Contohnya benefits in terms of free cars ataupun sewa rumah dan sebagainya, and many other things, yeah, that comes with that position as well. Okay, so those are the upper middle class group. Right, so all right, the second subgroup, the middle class tadi adalah the middle class, right? The middle class. This one refers to the self-employed owners or small businesses, ya. Ini kalau mengikut klasifikasi yang ada di Western countries lah. Self-employed owners of small businesses and proprietors of local shop. Jadi tuan punya kedai ataupun small business owners and so on, ya. And small businesses ini are much more unstable than the large ones, of course, yeah. And most fail within 2 years of being set up. Jadi kemungkinan untuk close down is quite high also, yeah, among this group of small businesses, yeah. So they close business and then open new one, of course lah. They can always do that, yeah. But this is the group they call the middle class study, yeah. So the United Kingdom, only 2% or 20%, sorry, of those established in any one year in UK are still in business 5 years later. Jadi quite dynamic lah in a way, yeah. The small businesses, yeah. Kadang they survive, many survive up to 5 years and more, but many also fail ataupun stop the business, right? Unable to continue after a short period of time. Okay, and then the lower middle class, kumpulan yang ketiga, yang bawah lah dalam kumpulan middle class tadi. These include people working as office staff, sales representatives, teachers, nurses, and others. These are the middle class, but the lower middle class. The diverse character of the middle class as a whole is well described by the concept of Wright and Perkin. Actually, I wanted to share with you on right and parking, but I thought maybe not necessary. These are the two person who went further based on apa nama Weber's theory on class study. Yeah, but that's okay. Yeah. Um, right. So there are contradictory situations caught between conflicting pressures and influence. Mereka ni adalah di kalangan yang mengalami certain pressures from the top, conflicting pressures and influence. And for example, the middle class people identify with the values of those in the upper middle class position, but live on incomes which are below those the better paid manual workers. Jadi, yeah, so some paid manual workers earn more than them. So that's the kind of situation they are in, the lower middle class. They're considered middle class, but they're not earning much. Yeah. So even the paid manual workers, which are in the working class, may earn more than them. Yeah. Macam kita di sini juga lah. Kalau you just normal government servant, ya, plus C ataupun D and C and so on, will even though they are office workers, they belong to the middle class, but they are to some extent, some of them are earning less than the manual workers who may have certain skills and so on. Right, so the lower middle class. Now, the third group, major group, is the working class. Yeah, kumpulan pekerja, the working class. Now, the working class consists of two divisions, dua bahagian based on skill levels, right? Based on skill level, those who are in the upper working class and the lower working class. The upper working class are those skilled workers, whilst the lower working class are the unskilled workers. Yeah? So the upper working class consists of workers who are very skillful, technicians, and so on and so forth. They do have a lot of skills. They are frequently referred to as aristocracy of labor. Kadang-kadang dikenali sebagai aristocracy of labor. The members have incomes, good incomes, and the conditions of work and job security are superior to those in the other less skilled ataupun the lower working class tadi. Right? So, although some skills have been undermined by technological development, contohnya replaced by technology, by machine and so on, but many in many trades, their incomes or their earnings have remained relatively high, and their jobs are more stable and also are much less affected by unemployment. In other words, job security itu ada di kalangan skilled workers ni, skilled workers. Okay, then the lower working class. The lower working class is made up of unskilled or semi-skilled jobs, while training is also needed for this particular class. All right, so these jobs however, carry lower incomes, and in terms of job security, they are less ataupun inferior. In other words, losing job adalah lebih kerap di kalangan mereka another lower working class ini. Checking. Okay, so in the West, those working full-time enjoy higher earnings, and also in terms of job security, and they are unionized. They belong to union. Unions of workers ataupun workers union, and they are mostly white males, while those working part-time are the peripheral sector and dominated by ethnic minorities, one often not unionized. Jadi ada di kalangan lower working class pun ada perbezaan ya antara the whites and also the ethnic minorities ataupun the blacks and so on. Right, so those are the main classes in the modern society. Yeah, the top society, the top classes, middle class, or rather the changes in class class structure. The middle class was divided into three: the upper middle class, the middle class, and the lower middle class, and then you have the lower or the working class, which are classified into upper working class and the lower working class today. All right. So, and then actually there is one more later on. um, the issue of what is known as the bourgeoisment thesis. I remember Karl Marx talks about the bourgeoisie, the industrialists, ya, ataupun yang group which is higher in his two classes, bourgeoisie dengan proletariat tadi. The thesis ini maksudnya adakah mereka yang dari bawah tu boleh naik, ya? Boleh can they become more affluent and then join the middle class ataupun upper classes tadi, ya? So as the working class become more affluent, question sociologists ask is if they are becoming middle class, and therefore societies will become more middle class society, right? So bourgeoisment tadi means becoming more bourgeois ataupun becoming more middle class tadi, ya. So the working class becomes middle class. Jadi so a study was carried out, yeah, in 1960s by John Goldthorpe and his colleagues to study what became a very well-known study of workers in the car and also the chemical industries in Luton. And this is often referred to as the affluent worker study. Jadi, so what they did was they studied about 200 manual workers, interviewed them, and the result showed that the bourgeoisment theory ataupun thesis tadi was false, ya, tidak jadi, tidak seperti yang dijangkakan tadi. Maknanya people in the working class are not becoming middle class, ya, are not becoming more middle class. So masih kekal, ya. So they were not committed to their work because it was repetitive and also uninteresting. Itu perkara yang kaitan dengan kerja-kerja yang dilakukan oleh kumpulan yang dalam working class tadi. So they're not so motivated, more or less, yeah, to work more because of the nature of the job tadi. So also did not associate with white-collar workers in their leisure time and did not aspire to rise up the class ladder. Dan itu mengikut kajian. Jadi kekal mereka yang dalam working class tu masih kekal dalam working class instead of moving on to the middle class punya group. Ya. Alright. The fourth one, additional one is the ataupun bukan kelas, it's called underclass. Yeah, the fourth category is the underclass. Now, these members of the underclass have much worse working conditions and a much lower living standard than the majority of the population. Now, these are the poor people, yeah. Right. So many are unemployed or drift in and out of work. Jadi sekejap ada kerja, kejap tidak ada. Yeah? Unemployed. So in Britain, for example, blacks and Asians are mostly, dalam kumpulan ini lebih ramai mereka yang berwarna kulit hitam dan juga Asians, ya. So they are disproportionately represented in the underclass group. people from Bangladesh, for example, who moved to Britain and occupy the apa nama kadang-kadang unemployed and so on. If they do work, sometimes they do have work, sometimes they don't. Yeah, so that's the kind of thing. In Malaysia pun kita ada migrant workers, for example, Indonesians, Bangladeshi, and so on. Yeah, who may belong to this underclass as well. Right. So these are foreign workers in the country. All right. So that is for the issue on class tadi lah. Ya, class dalam modern structure. Class structure modern society. Sorry. Ya. Alright. Jadi moving on, just a bit more on the issue of gender stratification. Ya. Gender stratification. Maksudnya sini adalah stratifikasi berasaskan gender. Yeah. So many of the routine non-manual occupation, for example, have been created in recent times, are filled by women. Yeah, women occupy those positions, the non-manual occupations. Ya, yang tidak berat tetapi menggunakan mesin dan sebagainya. For example, the factory, they call it operator pengeluaran. I think that's the kind of thing. Operator pengeluaran. Kerjanya bukan berasanya, tetapi it use machines, in the factory and so on. And these are mostly occupied by ataupun pekerjanya adalah di kalangan mereka perempuan, filled by women, young women. Yeah. So in other words, there is some kind of feminization of routine white-collar jobs, leading to what is now known as a pink-collar job ataupun people, for example, in the data entry job, work processing, photocopying, dan sebagainya. Right, so these tend to be dominated by women. Yeah, so that is the feminization of work lah. Yeah. So a lot of jobs have been de-skilled by technology. Ya, jadi telah digantikan ataupun dengan penggunaan teknologi, and women are directly linked to the skilled jobs tadi, ya, skilled jobs yang tidak sangat memerlukan skill. Skill has been taken over by technology, by computer, by machine and so on. Jadi all that need to be done is for the women's workers to kerja seperti dalam factory lah, ya, operator pengeluaran, they call it, for example. Yeah. So women also greatly outnumber men in lower category jobs in the expanding sector of marketing as well retail and leisure. So this is where that's why it's called gender and stratification and work stratification ataupun division of labor, more or less, where women occupy certain categories of job, dealing with, for example, service sector. A lot of those are employed a lot of women as well. So that's the idea of feminization tadi, of work. Right? So certain sectors lebih kepada kaum wanita dibandingkan dengan male workers. Example, women as sales assistants, dekat kedai, supermarket, and so on. Checkout assistants, waitress, and so on, So in other words, work in the lower personal services sector is largely feminized, sorry, ataupun dilakukan oleh kaum pekerja wanita maksudnya. Okay, so continue on gender and stratification. So for many years, the study of stratification also was rather gender blind. Yeah, in other words, meaning they were written as if women did not exist in the earlier stratification. Yeah, it was argued that women were in the main confined to the private domain, seperti di rumah, domestic world of family, taking care of children, and also household. Right, so men, on the other hand, live a public life of paid work, industry, as well as in politics. Okay, so because of that, for the purpose of analyzing power, wealth, and prestige, women were deemed to be unimportant and uninteresting. Right? Jadi apa nama ni nampak perbezaan ya di antara lelaki dan perempuan ya dari segi stratifikasi di sini. And it was therefore argued that the class position of women were the class position of their fathers or husbands. Jadi maksudnya kalau husband itu of high position, the women also belong to that class position. If the fathers or the husband is of lower class position, women also tend to be classified as such as well. Okay. So class inequalities were more important than gender inequalities di situ. Yeah? So the concern was more on class inequalities. Yeah. Rather than the inequalities between men and women in terms of employment, in terms of positions in society. Okay. But having said that, things are also changing. Yeah, some changes. For example, in many households, the income of women is essential, penting ya, in maintaining the family's economic position and lifestyle. Sekarang ini ramai apa nama tu kaum wanita bekerja, and so they contribute to the economic welfare of the family. So in such circumstances, women's paid employment determines the class position of the households and not the other way around. Jadi kalau dulunya the position of the class position of the household is determined by the husband, what the husband does, what the fathers does, but now the role of women, particularly in terms of paid employment, influence ataupun determines the class position of the household as well. Sebagai contoh ya, the husband mungkin is an unskilled or semi-skilled blue-collar worker, while as the wife may be a manager of a local shop or manageress of local shops. Jadi dari segi statusnya manager itu lebih tinggi lah daripada unskilled, semi-skilled blue-collar husband tadi ya. So the wife's occupation may set the standard of the position of the family as a whole. Right, so itu jadi merupakan satu perubahan juga ya dalam classification ataupun class structure. Okay, and then even when a woman earns less than her husband, her employment will give her household a leading edge in determining the household class position in comparison to a non-earning wife. Jadi di kalangan keluarga di mana wanita di situ ataupun the wife work and earns money through employment, that also determines the class of that family lah, class position of the family, which is better than those similar household, but with where the wife is not working, maksudnya, right? So there is slight differences, ya. Contohnya, a blue collar worker married to a secretary in comparison to a blue collar worker whose wife is a full-time housewife. Jadi, so the blue collar worker tadi who married the secretary itu lebih tinggi, ya, daripada the blue collar worker whose wife is not working at all. Right, so that is the changes, yeah. Okay, and also many many cross-class household also exist in which the work of the husband is in higher class category than that of the wife. Ya, jadi mempunyai apa nama tu especially among marriages lah, yeah, that one married to the other class. Okay, for example, husband is a doctor and the wife is a telephonist. Jadi ini so this is a cross class, ya, tidak sama kelas, ya, the middle class married to a lower middle class, for example. At the same time, the proportion of families in which women are the sole breadwinners are also increasing. Yeah, contohnya among single mothers, yeah, the sole parent become as divorce rate rise as well. Yeah, so women look after the children, in other words, the care of their family. So that is also increasing in some part of the world as well. Yeah? Jadi, because of that, then you see the role of women in a way changes in terms of the apa nama tu who is responsible for the family, for example. Yeah, so women become breadwinners. That's another story as well. Yeah. So, based on the research, clearly shows that economic class position or economic ataupun class position of a woman cannot be merely be seen as that of a husband. Jadi tak boleh dikatakan bahawa mereka itu kelas the family itu adalah bergantung semata-mata ke atas suami ataupun the father for that matter. Ya. Contohnya satu kajian yang dijalankan di Sweden, ya, sekitar tahun 1987 dibuat oleh Lifsrud and also Woodward, menunjukkan bahawa the cross-class families ini who stays to look after a sick child depend on who is earning more. Jadi kalau husband earns more, then the wife will have to look after the sick child. On the other hand, if the husband earns less, then he stays to look after the children instead. Jadi perubahan di situ, right? Dan juga satu kajian dibuat oleh Bonney ataupun Norman Bonney in 1992 also shows that high-earning women tend to have higher earning husband. Maknanya kalau isteri earns ataupun bekerja dan mendapat gaji yang tinggi, she's also likely to marry a husband who earns high income as well, right? And also the wives of men in professional and managerial occupations have higher earnings than other employed female partners. Jadi um, ada trend ya, trend yang menunjukkan bahwa if the husband is professional atau managerial group, um, they tend to get married to wife ya, um, apa nama tu yang mempunyai status ataupun earnings more than the other female partners yang who don't belong to the professional and managerial group tadi ya. Right? So high earning husband tend to get married to high earning wife ataupun sebaliknya. So marriage then tends to produce partnership where both individuals, husband and wife, are relatively privileged ataupun disadvantage in terms of occupational attainment. Jadi dua perkara yang boleh berlaku. Di mana kalau husband is privileged, then the wife also are likely to be the same group as well. Jadi kalau husband is disadvantaged, also tendency is that the wife also belongs to that group as well. Yeah. So I think that's all that I wanted to share with you with regard to the class structure in modern societies, dalam sistem yang kita ada sekarang, ya, modern system. Okay, now I open to discussion and comments, yeah, with regard to the lecture today. Any comment?
Doctor, can I try? This is
Sure.
Emmanuel Ronan. All right.
You are Emmanuel.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. So, in Sarawak especially, so how can we develop the the rural area to ask them to work more better work? How can we encourage them, especially orang kampung?
Yeah. Okay. What do you mean? Working in the rural areas or working somewhere else?
Maybe develop in rural, working in rural area.
Okay. Well, in the rural areas, of course, rural areas are pretty much still agriculture based with very little industries and so on in the rural areas. So, how do women contribute other than farming? Farming is something that is shared by family members, by the way. But other than that, women can contribute in the rural areas through other, maybe they can involve themselves with cottage industry, maybe, or maybe they can involve themselves with if there is any tourism, activities and so on. But I would think, in the long run, one way to improve the condition of the women in the rural areas is through education. Yeah, through education. That's to me, is the number one. Way to improve the conditions of women in the rural areas. Because if they have education, if they have access to education, then later they may be able to get jobs, probably not in the rural areas, but maybe in the the modern sector economy in the urban areas and so on. With education, they can they can have, better employment opportunities and so on. But if they do still have to stay in the rural areas, which is the way I see it. I watched this video regarding a family in Nepal, where the conditions among the rural areas is very difficult. Yeah, very, very difficult. And so the children of this family, they have two options. One is to stay behind. Um, for women in rural areas, that they want to get married, the tendency to get married early is quite high as well. Yeah. So then they tend to follow ataupun carry the work that has been done by the family before them, by the fathers, by the mothers, and so on. So very difficult to make improvement, yeah, in the livelihood of the daughters and so on, yeah, who continue, unless of course something change in the rural areas, for example, yeah. Kalau ada peluang-peluang pekerjaan, then it's okay. But if it is just depending on the subsistence, farming, for example, itu tidak berapa menggalakkan. Right. So I still think that marriage pula, that education is the most important factor untuk membawa perubahan, ya, ke atas kaum wanita di luar bandar.
Right. Thank you, Prof.
You're welcome. Any other comments? Anybody want to try? Share? Something that you may know that I don't know, or other people don't know. Okay, the issue of gender subjugation di sini lebih kepada pembahagian pekerjaan dan juga associated with the class as well lah, yeah, class status as well. I think modern day, I think it's also happening in our country as well. That women do not depend on men to I mean, I don't know, there's some families which do that, but I think the trend is that as women get more educated, as you can see now, I think there are more women in higher education compared to men. So I think there's going to be major changes in the near future as well. Yeah. So so women's change, they occupy better positions, better jobs, employment, and so on. So they will improve definitely in terms of the status, in terms of the class, yeah, from a lower class to maybe middle class and so on. All right. Any other issue? Okay, let me close this. Okay. So anything that you want to ask with respect to the lecture for today? In fact, previously in my past lecture, I talk a lot about the theories of by Max Weber and Karl Marx. Sehingga because I read a lot on articles written by Karl Marx, that I somehow Google recognized that, and so they have been sending me a lot of articles regarding Marxist theory and so on, which is not my intention in the first place. I just wanted to know about his work and so on. Okay, so anything else? Are you clear about this classification tadi? At least in the modern
Yes,
day lah.
Prof.
Yeah, remember the old
Yes,
days I
Prof.
told you about during the the old days, the feudal system and all that. The classification lain daripada sekarang, different from it is now. Okay. So as I said, as one of the earliest teori kelas ini adalah dikemukakan oleh Karl Marx tadi lah, based on what he observed, what was happening in Britain during the Industrial Revolution ataupun masa period of industrial capitalism. That's what he said. He was very concerned about the condition of the workers ataupun the proletariat, he call it, ya. Kerana mereka itu bekerja keras, ya. They work so hard, and yet the gaji mereka, their salary tidak setimpal ataupun doesn't increase every year. While as on the other hand, we observe the industrialists and the middle class, they earn more, from the daripada pekerjaan yang dilakukan oleh peringkat mereka yang di working class tadi. So that was the what triggered him to look into and come up with the book lah on the class tadi. His idea, as I said just now, is to he more or less thought that ini teori seterusnya lah, that the working class will become dissatisfied, they get angry and so on, and they melakukan satu revolution against against the middle class ataupun against industrialists. Dan itu akan menyebabkan tidak ada lagi kelas. Everybody will be equal, according to him. The classless society. Yeah, so that's how he came out with the doctrine ataupun communism. Yeah, communist doctrine too, where there is no classes, everybody is equal. But I'm not going into that. Yeah, itu lebih kepada politics and so on. Yeah, but previously I spent a lot of time on that. To see, what his idea was. Tapi itulah seperti yang dikatakan tadi, what he thought would happen did not happen. Yeah, in the first place, what did not happen is the fact that the working class sekarang ini mendapat gaji yang lebih besar daripada dulu, 3 to 4 times. So it's not stagnant. Itu pertama. Yang keduanya, there is no revolution. Apa yang berlaku di revolusi in France, the French Revolution was not quite what it is that he anticipated. It's a revolution, but not so much. There is the Russian Revolution. There is also another Russian Revolution, quite similar, but not as it is now. Jadi itulah berkaitan dengan kelas tadi, class structure. Memang kita ada class structure. In fact, later on we'll look at also some, contohnya di India ada beberapa class and so on, class system ataupun caste system they call it, kasta, kasta system, kasta, where they have the upper class and the lower class. Di situ lagi it's quite drastic. So people from the lower class cannot marry or even mix with the upper classes. There's some boundaries, right? So that even until today, kalau kita lihat di India masih lagi that class system. So it's a form of, in modern days, it's called a form of penindasan, ke atas those in the lower class that they can, in terms of employment, in terms of job and so on, they are being ditindas lah, ya, more or less, ya. So they cannot occupy certain jobs, position and so on because of their class tadi, even if they have good education. Jadi some of these people from the lower class, they would rather migrate to other countries. A lot of them have migrated, for example, to US, to the West, and so on, where they can earn better life. Yeah, because if they remain in India, mereka tak dapat because of the system kasta tadi. Okay, tapi kita di Malaysia, we don't really have that kind of system seperti itulah. What we have is the modern structure, as I said just now, based on income. Ya, dan kita di Malaysia pun ada indirect way of classification of people in our country, where we put the top 20%, the middle M40 group, the B40 group, you know, those are actually a form of classification, ya, klasifikasi dalam society, but basically based on the economic, yeah, rather than social, how much the family is earning. So klasifikasi adalah berdasarkan ekonomi ataupun income. Okay, any more questions ataupun komen? Saya yang buat komen sendiri tadi. Tak ada?
Tak ada doktor.
Okay.
Prof, salah.
Yeah. Tak apa. You know, there's a lot more you can read if you care to Google on this class system. You know, banyak information ataupun informasi yang berkaitan dengan tajuk inilah. Alright, so kalau tak ada, we stop here. Is there anybody yang saya telah tutup tadi. Bagi yang tak sempat untuk ambil apa nama tu attendance tadi, just write either menggunakan, let me check our WhatsApp group ada ke tidak. You can, as usual, gunakan WhatsApp group kita untuk record your attendance kalau tak dapat pakai QR code tadi. Alright, so itu saja. Thank you very much. I'll see you again next week. As I said, it's most likely recorded, a pre-recorded lecture. Right, so I'll upload on Elip. Kalau ada perubahan, saya akan maklumkan kemudian.
Prof, before that, saya nak tanya tentang e-poster. To what is it? Our assignment, group assignment.
Yeah.
So my group, we have came out with few idea for the poster. So how should I how should I share? Personal message or right here, or talk it right here right now?
Untuk apa tu? Submission ke apa? Bukan untuk ataupun untuk
e-poster untuk
ya,
tajuk.
untuk untuk tujuan apa?
Untuk how do I say that? Untuk
semakan ataupun untuk
pemilihan tajuk.
Pemilihan tajuk. Okay, you can send by email.
Alright.
Ataupun what else can you even personal message me pun okay juga. I can look at it, open it.
Alright. Okay.
Yeah.
Alright.
Yeah.
Alright. Okay.
Alright.
Thank you. Alright.
You're welcome. Alright. Okay, so thank you very much. I will just close the session and